Thank you everyone for joining. I am really excited to facilitate this conversation with, honestly, I think some of the organizations and builders that are putting human-centered design at their core and at the core of the organizations that they're building. And so with that, instead of asking everyone to do really long intros, because that's not super interesting, I hope you guys will put up with me as I maybe kick off with a question to each of you, and then we'll dive into some of the specific design challenges, and maybe you can weave your introduction into that question. And so Eric, because you're in the corner of my screen, I'll start with you. Node is building a React Native SDK, and the whole premise is about helping developers and product creators create a Web3 mobile app with just a few lines of code. And so why is that really important? What does Node make possible that wasn't possible before?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here. It's an absolute pleasure. And regarding your question, I would say two kind of themes that we're noticing. One, none of the Web3 apps are really built for mobile. I'm sure anyone here who's used a Web3 app, you'll notice that they're almost exclusively available on web. A good amount of them are pretty mobile friendly, but the research shows that users prefer to access these applications as apps installed to their device. So we make it easy for builders to either take their website, make it native mobile, or just start from that as their starting point. A second kind of theme that we notice is that all these dApps, they have the ability to connect a wallet, but very few of them give you the option to create a wallet. This is the equivalent in Web 2 if you let users only sign in but not sign up. So with our stack, we also make it easy for people to create a wallet using just the traditional EOA, and then securing it using biometrics and secure cloud backup, as well as other options like social sign-in. And then we bundle together a lot of other pieces of key infrastructure, but I would say like those kind of two key things: helping people create wallets and manage those wallets securely and safely, while also just helping builders create beautiful solutions for the mobile space.
That's awesome. Thanks, Eric. And I want to come back to this wallet creation thing, because I do think it's a major design challenge in Web3, and I think you guys are building some cool stuff to address it. But I'll switch maybe, Buhari, to you and hear a little bit about, I know that Bitmama helps people buy, send, trade crypto. That sounds like, when I describe it, something that is designed for crypto natives. And so where do last mile users fit in? What do you think they're using Bitmama to do?
Hi everyone, my name is Buhari. Yes, so at Bitmama, we cater for also people in the rural areas, and currently we have people using Bitmama to buy airtime and data. Airtime and data is very important in Nigeria, so most people find it hard to get airtime and data. So on Bitmama, you can purchase airtime and data. So that's one of the features we offer there.
Awesome. And Kunbi, I'll pass it to you. So Bitssa, it helps people cash out crypto into fiat currencies. I think you're in 13 countries, maybe even more now. So why is this off-ramp so important? Why do last mile users come to you? Why do they choose you?
Well, because, and again, thanks for the question, Becca, and thanks for having us on this panel and this webinar. I think it's simple. The ability for people to actually use their digital assets in real world situations is pretty important. I think we can get caught up in the whole virtual metaverse. All would love to be crypto native in our lives, but the reality is that we all have to have some ability to off ramp to provide some sort of usability in what is currently the real world. And so we wanted to provide that sort of gateway, and our sort of like our pitch is, as many currencies that are popular and are possible, we want to feature them both on the digital side as an on-ramp and an off-ramp on the physical side. So that's why we have such a large bouquet of countries spread across multiple continents and reaching as many people as possible. So that's really just the basis premise: digital to reality, usability, real world use cases.
That's awesome, and totally resonates with me that it's not that fun to build an imaginary currency that's for imaginary things. It's useful to build it in a way that intersects with people's real financial lives.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to start off, I want to focus our discussion at the beginning at some of the user challenges that we see that come up basically all the time in Web3. And one of the biggest ones that seems to come up everywhere is this interaction of, oh, well, when I think, Eric, you put it well, like sign in, not sign up. When I start to use something for the first time, I'm sent off to like some other organization that I might not be familiar with. You're saying like, I want to use X, but I've got to go over to MetaMask first. I need to go set up there. Then I come back. Then I get started using the application. And it's got all these breakage points, right? Especially for last mile users, but I'd argue for any user. It's got all these points where if you're not deeply committed to doing the thing, you're going to drop out of the flow. And so, Eric, I might start with you because I know Node has built a couple different things that are meant to address this exact problem. So I wonder if you could give us kind of an overview of how you're going after that.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for contextualizing my response earlier. Like I said, only having Connect Wallet's the equivalent of only having a sign up button or a sign in button, but I didn't touch on that. Even if that's the case, even connecting an external wallet is like a big break in the user flow. But yeah, I mean, I think that I briefly touched on it in my previous response, but there's a few different primitives that we're making easy for builders. So I think a lot of people are hesitant to let their users manage private keys. They don't even want to offer the create a wallet button because then they have to have customer support regarding if a user loses their 12 to 24 words. And I think that there's really good solutions coming out for addressing that. I was actually looking up, I saw someone in the chat that it was talking about their app. It's a payments app on Polygon. And I was looking at their user onboarding flow and how they let people sign up using iCloud and Google Drive. And I'm assuming that what's happening here is that your private key is being encrypted and backed up to the cloud. This is a very important primitive that we're starting to see being rolled out to lots of different wallets. And by offering primitives like that to builders, then they can more easily offer wallet creation to their end users. Because if they can lose their phone or if their phone can break or get stolen and they can easily recover it, then it really is just like any other application. And letting your users create a wallet is essentially the same as creating a Web2 account at that point. And so I would say that's one of the big ones, but also just making it super easy for the end developer to do it as well. So like our tagline is access any primitive with one line of code, wallets in particular. So we make it easy for doing things like creating a mnemonic that's in a language that's not English, for example. That we make it super easy to do that, or creating a wallet to where its default gas currency is set in like a stable coin. So that way you don't have to hold the native currency to submit transactions. You can, for example, send tokens or swap tokens using a US dollar stable coin to pay for gas. And looking into the future, abstracting away other wallet management functionalities like, some networks don't support custom gas tokens. So being able to set up our own gas station service so that way users don't even have to think about gas at all. And I think really just a common theme of taking all these ideas though and making them really easy for developers to consume within their applications.
I love that. It's like, how do we just let this better design just easily proliferate into many different products and services? I also have to laugh a little when you're like, and then people don't want to do it because they have to set up customer support. Oh God, customer support. What a disaster to have to make. Another user challenge, maybe Buhari, this is a question for you that I feel like we hear a lot in Web3 is thinking about these moments that are higher risk for user and maybe unique risk because they're interacting in Web3 and that's introducing new risks on peer-to-peer, counterparty risk. They're high stakes. And I wonder how you think about in the Bitmama experience, highlighting, hey, this is a risk that might feel unfamiliar to you, might be different than what you're taking in a Web2 context. Are there interventions or things that work particularly well?
Yes, currently we have the P2P feature of Bitmama and is of high risk because people come on the platform to buy and sell cryptos. And one thing we do while they are performing that action is we have like a warning telling them that you need to confirm that you received that payment before you confirm the coin and all of that. So one thing we do is we hold back that coin in escrow. So once we confirm that both users are satisfied, we then release the coin or the payment, for instance. So it's something we cater for. And on that screen as well, we also have like disputes. You can, if there's a dispute between you and the buyer or you and the seller, You could even talk to customer support. So what we try to do is to cater for all of these things. The risk will be low. So that's something we do on our P2P currently. So I think with our new P2P, users are really satisfied. I don't think so far we have challenges surrounding that. So, but we keep working on it. We keep improving on it because it's something that users always use because of the crypto ban in Nigeria. So P2P is something users always want to use, and with that, we need to cater for that risk. Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. I'm hearing architectural considerations, right? Moving these things to escrow, not necessarily confirming the I'm hearing those like moments of explicitly asking for input from your user to confirm that they understand this risk or they understand where they are in the process. That feels so important. Also heard that, you know, you're doing some customer support. See in the notes in the chat, not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Probably actually the best way to get a feedback loop from your customers to you.
Exactly.
Kunmi, maybe I'll toss it to you, which is, I know a lot of times in Web3, people just get really worried. Actually, I won't even say this is Web3. Any financial services app, especially for a last mile user, people get really worried about, well, if I do it wrong, what could happen and what could I do wrong? And so I wonder if you might talk through when users are trying to cash out from crypto to fiat or cash in, what are the types of errors that you see them making regularly? And how do you think about supporting them in those moments, either to not make that error, or if they have, to figure out like what they should do next?
Yeah, another of the questions that I wish we had a universal solution for. It's, the term fat fingers, right? People do make mistakes. It's commonplace. We try as much as possible to mitigate the experience of what you need to input. If we minimize the amount of input you have to put into the system, like, your basic, what's your name, what's maybe your address, what is your bank account or your mobile money destination and country, and of course, visualization. So we have, relatively, we put the most important information up top that's required, and then sort of like the less secondary information that we know you could probably make mistakes upon in those, towards the end of the flow of the transaction. But people generally will make mistakes just out of like, typos, errors of omission as well. We have to have a minimum sort of fields for specific countries. And payments is kind of a very interesting landscape. There's not one size fits all. One country may require you to put in your first and last name. Another country may not have that requirement. It may be more insistent about a date of birth or a street address. And, of course, in certain of the markets that we operate in, they don't have street addresses. People just don't have addresses as well. They'll have an address that's equivalent of just next door to the mosque, upside down underneath the bridge, kind of an address, right? So we try as much as possible to really customize the form of the flows to relevant to the countries that they're in, so that we're not just coming and saying, earlier in my career, one of the things that we would see is that we'd have developers that we've brought on board that are, of course, either US or UK or European trained, and every form would have zip code. There's no zip code in Ghana. There's nobody who has a zip code in India. Why do we have zip code? And then people will be emailing us back, I don't have a zip code. What should I put in there? Like, sorry. So we really work about understanding what are the features in each specific market, and then try to then put the required fields up top, put subtle hints that you haven't filled out the required field. But we've never been able to get a full 99.99x confirmation rate of error-free rate. It's just that people will still make mistakes. And I'll give you just two, just for context of the conversation we're having. We have one user, particular user, who's been on our platform for over a year. And he's based out of India. And for those of you who are in Southeast Asia, you might be very familiar with this. Every time his user comes to our platform, he always puts his first name, last name as, let's say, Khalil, son of Buba. Like, why are you letting us know who your dad is? Your last name is Buba, but he always puts son of. Our systems can't handle that. We've gone back to him 101,000 times, and 101,002 times he still makes that common error. So we have to be mindful of that specific kind of user, where this is his mindset. He's asked for his last name, and according to him, he always puts his last name as blah 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 blah. And then of course the most common one is kind of like the date of birth. Is it the US state nomenclature or the metric nomenclature? And we have to still handle that as well. Give our systems room for that. So it's never error-free, but do as much as possible to localize it for your user base and minimize how much they need to put in that actually is required. Everything else is extraneous, so you can just delete that and just process with the necessary information.
That makes a ton of sense. And I see Ian Dillon in the chat. It's reminding me of like all sorts of honestly like Web2 remittance products, right? And all sorts of things where you're sending payments to different areas that might be different information we need to collect. And we need to think about how do you make that a delightful user experience, knowing that like there's actually a ton of information to collect in a lot of places where things can go wrong. I think there's lots of cool design things to try there. Sorry, I'm just getting deep into it. But like thinking about, I'm hearing you say this, like, are we chunking this up for the user so it's not an overwhelming amount to fill up right at once? Are we thinking about even our prompts and saying like, are we saying zip code? Are we saying postal code? Do we have an open field in case there's more for the address? Like there are these like relatively basic tweaks that can make these application designs much more inclusive. Maybe to that end, I'm going to switch this a little bit into Bukhari. One of the reasons I'm so inspired by Bitmama is that you guys recently went through a redesign of your entire DApp, and the whole point of that redesign was to make it more inclusive. And I think, Deepika, if you can screen share, I think we've actually got some of the new screens that we can show you guys in the audience. But I wonder if you might walk us through some of the examples that we'll pull up on the screen on what did the product look like before? How did you change it? Why did you make those changes?
Okay. For us at Bitmama, I remember back when we started, Bitmama was more of an MVP. We wanted to roll out as fast as possible so we can start using the product in the market. And when we went to market, it wasn't easy, but with time we were able to like work on the product. And one thing we noticed back then was we're getting users and we're also getting UX complaints a lot. I think back then we also had like people always complaining about some of our UX processes. And when we knew it was time for us to like do a revamp, what we did was to sit back and majorly do like a overhaul design of Bitmama itself. One thing we didn't change was just the logo, but the colors, the typography, and all of that. We sat down and we were able to change that. And during the revamp, one thing we put in mind while doing that was we wanted our platform to be accessible. We wanted the apps to be accessible to anybody, not just crypto savvy users. We also wanted people that are new to crypto to be able to use the platform without having to maybe crack their head or having to go to Google to understand some of these things. And one thing we did was to give users the kind of designs that it is easy for them to understand. That I think on our social media, another thing we do, we try to explain some of these things, make it fun for people to understand what some of these features are. And yeah, this screen you put up right now is our referral screen. You can see the one on the left is what we had before, and the one on the right is the new design. And one thing we did on our referral is for every referral you get like you get rewards for referring people, and that reward as well. We also like try to encourage people by giving them some tokens, some coins or some gifts that they can use to like trade on the platform as well. And yeah, another thing we also did was we tried to do something around gamification, and gamification is still something we're going to work on more this year. We want to use gamification to drive user engagement here. Engagement is what we need from our users to always use the platform. We don't want you to just come on the platform, do one thing and run away. We always want you to come back and do so many things. And when I say so many things, we have so many features. We keep rolling out. Just rolled out something called Greenbox, and Greenbox is more of a way of is a rewarding system. And currently, we have influencers, we have celebrities that are using the Greenbox to like gift their followers. So for us, the overall design was just to make the product be marketable, make it stand with other products in the market right now. And also, we also made it simple. I mean, simplicity is what everybody is looking for right now. So yeah, that was it for us.
That's amazing. And I saw so many decisions in those designs that are focused on
Yeah.
making this more usable. Everything from, I mean, even what Becca was sharing earlier, signposting, including transparency, not having a zillion decimal places, like all these things that just make this dramatically more usable. It also it makes me think about this moment that I imagine a number of Web3 projects are in right now, where there's an early adopter group that's really committed, right? That will jump over any hurdle to use your application. And we're moving more and more into more mainstream users, maybe not your grandma, but maybe your cousin, right? Who's like, all right, I'm curious about this. I'm not necessarily deeply committed. One of the places that I see this often break for Web3 projects is that the feedback loops that we have for our early adopters don't necessarily exist for the sort of next generation of users. And that can sort of sway a little bit of our building or thinking. I think I'm super inspired by how with Bitmama, you said okay, great. What we have is working really well for our early adopters. It's not going to work for our next wave of users, and let's go after them. Let's go figure that out. And yes, I do think the cousin is often doing things for grandma, or maybe I'm the only one who sets up all Web3 things for my parents. Kunbi, I might toss it to you, because I know that you have talked about how simplicity is truly your North Star with Bitssa. I actually use the Bitssa example all the time of I have blank and I want blank. And I'm like, yes, this is the simplest way to help a user understand what you do and your promise. And so I wonder if you might share a little bit about why does that matter so much, and how does that show up in the design choices you've made in the application?
Yeah, I think it starts with the fact that I like the IQ of some of my other panelists. I'm just not a very smart guy. I just don't have that depth to be able to create things that are just expansive and, over the top and blow your mind kind of thing. I'm a, really meat and potatoes kind of guy, even though I'm a vegetarian. So let's maybe potatoes kind of person. So, but on a more reflective note there, when I came up with the idea of Bitssa, and I was really trying to figure out a way to marry my love and desire to see Web3, Web2 become the dominant financial intermediation tool for emerging markets and less so other markets out there. I always wanted it to be rocket sciencey, first grade level thinking. How can we make it such that a first grade person anywhere in the world of educational attainment can apply and use this without bombarding us with questions? And just, really, like you said, customer support. The days of customer support I'd love to outnumber them and just be UX, easy design, color scheme that makes sense, works on your phone, only on your phone, and is very low intensity and low bandwidth. Those are sort of common features. And so it's always driving my decisions on how things need to be reflected for the user. The user I'm trying to target is one of the 4 billion at the bottom of the pyramid, sitting around. They could be anywhere from the outskirts of Bamako in Mali, with barely 5 hours of electricity a day, all the way into the refugee camp in up in the Ghanaian Volta region, or someone in South Sudan. I had the experience of working for a really large bank in Africa, and one of the roles I held was to really travel around all our different outposts as the head of strategy for that bank. So I've seen some really strange and less wealthy and less infrastructurally abled environments. And so I'm thinking, how is a user living in that environment going to actually be able to utilize a product that I make for them? So that's always behind what we do. And so as you can see the screen up there, it's very simple. The colors are, bold blue colors. We use a lot of white because we feel that would work very well. And one of the things that we've also tried to focus on is trying to make it less iOS and hopefully more Android. As much as we sit in the United States with our MacBooks and our iPhones, the majority of the world is Android first. So we're always trying to build for the Android environment as well. So, and also trying to ensure that our website and a potential app are not always subject to revision because of new policies from the iOS store or the Play Store. So how do we keep it so simple and so unnoticeable? And we had an experience. It's slightly different from what Bitmama went with their redesign. We got a new designer halfway through our journey, and she was very, very talented. She came from Brazil. I had a similar experience with working in emerging markets, and she put a whole bunch of different things. This is her work, and I'm very proud of what she helped us out with. But we were bombarded with messages for at least a month after our redesign. And we thought it was a very minor redesign. It was color scheme with, you moved this box. They didn't know what to do anymore. People were just befuddled because they don't look at the text or the languages. It's kind of like when you make a phone call. Like when I call my siblings, I don't know their numbers, but I know by keystroke, pop, 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 pop. This is my brother's number, my mom's number, my dad's, da, da, da. And sometimes I forget, I don't even know the numbers anymore because I've been dialing it out of just muscle memory. People who use our site are not looking at the text. Even if the text is converted from English to Hindi or to French, they're looking at the box. The box on the upper left says input. They know what to type. They know what to type in the box below. They know if they hit this green button, it sends them to the screen. So when we move those boxes around, we want to change the flow to make it more efficient, it throws them off entirely. And we had to go through a whole relearning exercise, shoot a whole bunch of new videos, a whole bunch of new language conversions, just to explain that this box has just moved here. It's gone, no, it's not gone anywhere. It's just moved to a different side of the screen. And so that really holds me to try and keep things tight and similar. And if we make any changes, it has to stay within that same flow for the kind of users we are. As we evolve, of course, and we get a more, it's a little more educated user base, we might be a little more aggressive or more risk in taking risks to change things. But generally right now, we follow that same premise. The user we have isn't very well educated, is probably learning from somebody else on how to use our app, and how can we make sure that we do not change things too much to cause those users to just give up in shock. That's kind of our thing.
I love that. And it's also making me think you're describing that as, oh, well, once a user knows what to do, they go back to doing the same thing every time. I think you also see that with new users, right? I feel like we've seen this so many times where people are going through an onboarding flow. And this is such a Web3 problem, like this over-explain thing where it's like, I'm going to put a ton of text on this page and everyone's going to read every word and they're going to deeply understand each meaning. But like the truth is, they're just going to click, 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 click until they get to whatever screen is going to help them do why ever they showed up in your app in the first place. And so that core of simplicity feels super crucial. And I appreciate you bringing up that point about Android. I think it's also really important to think about, you guys are building, to Deepika's point, mobile first and then extend to desktop, not desktop first. And then we're going to figure out mobile, or we're just going to make it mobile responsive. And I think that's also really core to making users feel comfortable using this, feel like it's designed for them, feel like it matches to the other applications or other things they're doing in their financial lives already. Eric, I know you sit in a kind of interesting spot because of what Node does, you're seeing a whole bunch of different projects, right? You're seeing projects that are trying things, sometimes they work, sometimes they're breaking. But I'm curious to think about, or to hear from you, any examples of projects that are building on Node that you're looking at and saying like, hey, there's actually something really cool about how they're designing this that the audience might want to hear about.
Yeah, there's a couple examples that come to mind, but before I go there real quick, just because I see actually someone from their team in the call, you had brought up how users will jump through hoops the early adopters, if you're providing real value for people, they'll jump through hoops to use your product. And a product that I'm super excited about in Web3 would be Ethic Hub, and they're doing under collateralized lending to coffee bean farmers throughout Latin America, and just a very cool product, very cool offering. Their users are quite literally using MetaMask. And I'll touch a bit more on this later, but we're in the talks with them about helping them roll out their own mobile wallet as a way to scale to direct to farmers. But super amazing project, super excited about that. Not quite working with them yet. We're still in the planning phase of helping them navigate launching their own wallet. But two projects that come to mind for us would be Gane and Libera, which is an app built by Impact Market. I'll start with the latter. So Libera, it's a mobile wallet launched by the team over at Impact Market. For those that don't know, Impact Market is a crowd-funded universal basic income protocol. And they have beneficiaries all around the world. I think they're in over 50 different countries. And they work with a handful of different organizations like the World Food Program to help with cash disbursement, financial aid, etc. They noticed a huge friction point in their user onboarding flow. They would download the Impact Market app, and then the first thing they would say is connect Valora. And a lot of users are probably thinking, what the heck is Valora? Well, Valora was a wallet that they had chose as their preferred wallet provider. And that's just a massive break in the user flow. That is kind of like the equivalent of, I guess, like in the earlier days of Web 2 or Web 1 potentially, to where whenever you're signing up for a website and they require you to come with an email, but you don't know what an email is or how to make one. And so they viewed this as an opportunity to vertically integrate, roll out their own wallet with the UBI functionality baked into the wallet itself. So now users can onboard to a single app, claim the UBI, and then cash out through places like Swap Bitsa and Bitmama to spend it in the real world. And actually, Impact Market uses both of these services, I know, or their users use both these services to cash out, and they're providing very important, like without them, honestly, this app would not be not nearly as valuable as it is. But yeah, that's a pretty cool product. And they're using this, they're treating UBI as kind of like a stepping stone to more financial services. The next one that we're going to is microcredit. So it's not in the mockups, I think, here, but the ability to extend a credit line to someone, anywhere from $100 to $200, just based off of their past transaction history, and really at this stage, very exploratory. But the second project, which I saw you queue up there, is called Gane. This is one of the more novel ones, I would say. So they're a telco, they're based in Mexico. They give out free SIM cards to people, and whenever they put that SIM in their phone, it installs an app, the Gane app. And from this app, they are able to watch ads for local like restaurants and businesses to earn Gane tokens, which can be redeemed for airtime. So they can essentially earn airtime into existence. It's kind of like a different form of UBI, is the way I look at it. You are working to get to earn the tokens, but regardless. So this is currently a Web 2 application. The Gane tokens accrue off-chain, but they're looking to deploy that on-chain. And this is like again, sort of using the analogy, it's a stepping stone to introducing Web3 to their users. So it's taking a concept they're already familiar with, the Gane token, and then we're going to put it on the blockchain. They're not even going to, the users aren't even going to know that we do this step. But one thing that they're going to be able to do once we do that is they're going to be able to remit the Gane tokens between each other, because Gane now has that added security of, instead of using their own database, they can use a public blockchain, and they can start rolling out more read and write functionality to end users. So that is step number one. So you can watch these ads, earn the airtime, you can use it for yourself, or you could remit it to friends and family. We will then start to roll out, as you can see here in the mockups, stable coins. So that way they can truly, start to use this as like a financial application, and then eventually rolling out things like savings products. So that way, again, just sort of vertically integrating up the finance stack and offering more value to these users, particularly targeting like the Mexico-US payment corridor. But yeah, I think a great example of taking a Web 2 concept and sort of seamlessly transitioning users from Web 2 to Web 3 in a way that is not intimidating or confusing, hopefully.
That's awesome. And those are both such inspiring examples. I want to, because we've only got 9 minutes left, open this up to the audience to ask questions that you guys might be thinking of. So either type your question in the chat or raise your hand and I can call on you. And, oh, sorry, Garmin is telling me only type them. Only type your questions into the chat, please. Maybe while we're waiting. Oh yeah, sorry, someone came off mute. Okay, maybe while we're waiting, I'll throw this out to any of you. You guys are doing awesome stuff. You're making great strides in design for Web3, making Web3 more inclusive. When you think about it, what still needs to get solved? Like what is, I'm sure there's many things, but what's at the top of your list of, yeah, this thing is still super broken and we need to figure something out to address it?
Can I throw out my there? We just need to find a way to become uni-chain and not all these multi-chains that we have. We got to find a way to just normalize that. I think it creates way too much confusion. Too many mistakes are made as chains are proliferating. People are trying to transition tokens across chains. we need the ultimate wormhole behind all of these chains. That would, it doesn't necessarily be designed, but it has an element of design, because for us, when we have people connect to our platform and they don't have their MetaMask, but they need to be connected to the Celo mainnet of MetaMask, be able to connect to this and then to that, to this and that, it just creates opportunities for drop off and creates confusion as to why they cannot interact, because they're on Tron and we only support Ether, and we only support this because our libraries are not able to support anything. I think utopia would be single chain, across the whole metaverse meta system. Yeah, that's my take.
Co-signing that so much, seeing your agreement in the chat. One question that looks like it's coming up in the chat from Marcus. So there's a wallet wars narrative, right? Which wallet is going to win? But it seems like today, last mile wallets are super geographically segmented. So from your perspectives, is the same thing going to occur for all these different wallets as geographies start to overlap? Is there going to be a sort of like one winner as a wallet provider, or is it going to remain a pretty segmented or fragmented experience for users?
Yeah, I'll start here. I think that it depends. So I'm of the mindset that there's going to be a ton of different types of wallets in the future, and sort of what I call like embedded wallets. It's kind of like the idea that a lot more apps are starting to offer general fintech functionality within them, just embedded within the app itself, like payments, cash balances, etc. So I think for like the general kind of like DeFi super app, like the one app to access all of Web3, I would imagine that will kind of be, there will be a handful of winners. But for the application specific wallets, so for like the impact markets, the ethic hubs, I personally believe that a lot of companies that are in this path will take the sort of application specific wallet route and let users, if you already have a wallet, fine, you can sign in with MetaMask if you want. But if you don't, or if you want to import your 12 to 24 words into the app, at least it will have the functionality to let you do that if you want to.
Awesome. And then I'm seeing a question in the chat, or maybe I'm interpreting a question in the chat around specifically KYC, which I think actually comes up in Web2 as well. But KYC can be a really big barrier to users getting started, getting going. Have you guys seen solutions or approaches that decrease some of those entry barriers or make that KYC process, which might be required, feel a little more doable to last mile users?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Buhari.
Okay, yeah. I think this question actually just something we experienced in a couple of months. One thing, our KYC is pretty, should I call it, we focus on it very well. And one thing we do during our KYC, we have like 3 levels of verifications. And for each of those verifications, we tell users certain things to do. And over time, we've come to realize that most of them don't really understand those things we tell them to do. Take, for instance, we see, take a picture of your passport or something, or take a headshot. We notice that most people don't really get some of those things we sell. So what we did was to illustrate these things. So for every level of verification you are working on, while you're on that page, on the instructions, what we try to do, we illustrate it, or we do like a short video on that page for you to be assisted that this is what you need to do. And I think just yesterday we had like increased number of people doing their verification and not having issues. And because one thing we do right now is we use data to analyze most of these things that we do at Bitmama. So I would say the illustrations we do to explain to users that this is what you need to do on KYC has really helped. And why still we do that KYC, we have our customer support ready. One thing we are trying to build at Bitmama right now is customer support 24/7. We want you to be able to come in the middle of the night and say, oh, I'm having issues with something or KYC. And we always have somebody to attend to. So we have staff members working 24/7. We have shifts. So that has really helped us in like bringing people on board faster and quicker. Because we can't actually like run away from KYC. KYC is very important, especially in this part of the world. So yeah, that's it for us.
That's awesome. And Kumbi, were you gonna hop in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Buhari did address that very well. How do you make customers understand that there is a need to have KYC? Otherwise, we cannot provide you the service, because we are not utopian where we can just let anybody on and let anybody off our platforms. So an element of identification of who you are and how we can gather that data is also pretty important as well. I think the KYC solutions that we connect with are more first world solutions. You're expecting to be able to upload a passport or driver's license and stuff. Well, what do you do in an environment where the person doesn't have that level of identification, right? And then how do we introduce a little more biometrics? I think Eric was referring to, the biometrics that, I think we've seen tools that are seamlessly and you can embed in your platforms that will allow you to use your, your face, your thumbprint, or, your Apple sign in by Apple. But they also tend to be a little expensive, and the user doesn't want to pay for that. So we're trying to struggle with how do you give a Web3 experience, but take advanced tools that could be applicable in the environment, but at a cost that a user doesn't want to pay for. So that's still a struggle that we're working with. And sometimes you just have to go to the basics and you say, take a picture of yourself with something that shows that you are in your environment to show you're real, and then we'll just work with that going forward. But ideally, we can bring the cost of these KYC tools that are built first world down for emerging world. I think that'd be very beneficial.
Yeah, it's like the solutions exist. We have to figure out how to scale them sustainably.
Mhm.
And with that, we are right in our last minute. So I think we're going to have to wrap up here with a huge thank you to all of you, Eric, Buhari, Kumbi. I'm so sorry we couldn't get Ruth. Sounds like there were internet troubles, but also a thank you to the audience. The Zoom chat was fire. I'm looking forward to reading it. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. Hoping to keep in touch with all of you, hoping to design a more inclusive Web3 with everyone here. So thanks so much and have an awesome Tuesday.